Akron Arlen Vanke. Welcome again to Akron, your home. And one of the questions I asked your nephew Tim was, where did we coin the name Akron Arlen? Was that your idea?
No, actually, when I used to call Chrysler for my parts, I'd say, "This is Arlen Vanke from Akron, Ohio." So they started calling me Akron.
Okay.
And the name stuck.
It sure did. Actually, now we know. So if anyone asks us that question. The next thing on our minds were we see all the pictures of the great old Pontiac, Anderson Pontiac, and then later Bill Knafel Pontiac. And I know that's how you got started. You actually went out and bought your first car, is that right, at Pontiac, and built it yourself? Is that the way it worked, Arlen?
Yes, it did. I stopped at Knafel Pontiac one day to get parts. It was Anderson Pontiac then. And while I was out there talking to the parts guy, Mr. Knafel overheard me talking and come out. And we talked, and before I left that day, I had ordered a new 62 Pontiac Super Duty car. And he had a Super Duty motor on display there, and I also took that home with me.
So you were a motorhead from...
Oh, yeah.
With all the Akron, like Odie Smith and some of the great cam jammers were around in those days?
Yes. Everything was automotive oriented. And as I went to Barberton High School, and I graduated at 5'2", 103 pounds, I didn't participate in sports. So looking around at all the people who were very good at sports, they're stars, I was very envious of their position. And when I found out something I could do, which was work on cars or drive cars, I went at it full bore, because it took me somewhere where I couldn't get without finding something that I was very good at. And it just came natural. My father never drove a car in his life.
Incredible.
So.
And do you think building the cars and being a mechanic helped you to drive a car? Unlike today, drivers are drivers. They don't build the cars. Was that a help, Arlen?
I think it was. The only thing that happened was that time and money caught up with me. And in this day and age, you can't do everything.
Did you ever worry about breaking the car when you're out there, wide open throttle, shifting gears?
I think that's always in the back of your mind. And in the early days, when parts were very fragile, I suffered a lot of breakage on the street. So it was no stranger to me. I knew what it took to do it. And I think working on the car and fixing the car, you had a better understanding of how everything went about. And you did better, I thought, anyhow.
Now, I had the privilege of sending you some video of an old, well, it wasn't old then, a 55 Chevrolet that you raced at the Akron airport. Was that one of your first cars and one of your first chances at racing?
It was one of my more successful first cars. My first car was a 44 two-door sedan with a flathead motor that I modified, and unfortunately, at that point, money bought a lot of those guys' parts, and I didn't have it. And when we raced at behind the Barberton Shopping Center, and one Monday evening, my mom announced, "Louis," which was my father, "our son needs help." And she gave me a check for $400. And that springboarded me into some form of credibility anyhow. At least my car could keep up.
Along those lines, the sponsorship came along later, and Pontiac really had an opportunity to really put their name on the map with you. They decided maybe corporately that they weren't into that, and along came Mopar. That was a pretty good marriage.
Yes, I started with the Pontiac deal and Mr. Knafel, and it gave me an opportunity to race somewhere every weekend and not worry about the money part. And Pontiac was very, very good. And ironically, my first boss at Pontiac was John Z. DeLorean, who we all know became president of Pontiac and then built his own car later. But he was my first boss.
Great stuff. Yeah. And then, of course, the storied success that you had with Mopar that began early on in the 60s, and really it built and built, and we talked about you winning probably 80, 85, 90% of your races.
Yes.
And those were straight up races back then.
Yes.
None of this handicapping.
No. No. Most of the cars were right in the top class, and everybody in that class run heads up.
Arlen, there's probably hundreds of people here at Bob Jones's in line to talk to you. I want to thank you again for this opportunity to share some of the past with you, and to the audience here in Akron that still love you and still we're very proud of you. Thanks for showing up, Arlen.
Well, let me tell you, I really enjoyed coming back to Akron, and this is my home. Thank you.
Arlen mentioned DeLorean, which was the president of Pontiac. DeLorean had a couple pretty unique ideas, one of them being the GTO, that, as we know, was pretty successful. He did a pretty good job with that. And little did we know that Pontiac would bite the dust just recently. As a matter of fact, last month was the last Pontiac built. Another interesting fact was John DeLorean contacted Bill Knafel here in Akron and says, I'm having issues with this overhead cam 6-cylinder Pontiac that I have this fiberglass rubber belt instead of timing chain and gears. And people aren't happy with it. They're afraid of it. They think it'll break. They don't think it's a good idea. And would you consider putting Arlen in a race car and showing people that that concept will work? That was one of the cars that Arlen raced. It was called a mystery car. And now, just about everything on the road has timing belts on it now. So, Mr. DeLorean had a good idea. The overhead cam 6-cylinder went away, but the timing belt that was his idea is still alive and doing very, very well. The last car that Arlen was involved in, it now belongs to his nephew Tim. It's still in the area, and it was on display at Mr. Jones' museum. And we had just a couple minutes. We'll show you a couple shots of not only the car, but also a pretty good shot of the Hemi motor. Take a look at it.
I got for 40 years. That's last time I see them. I was wondering if you would